Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. All right, we'll get going here. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone that has joined us today. This session is being recorded, so if you're unwilling or unable to be part of the recording, please, you may drop off now. We're planning to go for about 40 minutes today. My name is Ismail Nalwala, and I'm the CEO of IOTAP, based out of the DC metro area. My company, IOTAP, is a Microsoft Cloud Solutions partner, and Work 365 is the application that we've developed on Dynamics 365 for cloud-focused and services companies. Today, we have a slightly different format for our presentation. I have some speakers with me. Along with the updates that I normally share, we're going to have some interesting educational content as well. So with that, I'm going to move into my agenda. So I will cover some quick application updates at a high level. And then we have George Miller from Cloud Readiness, who'll give us some insights into the cloud business models. And then Yusuf Khatri, our CTO, will share some updates on how some of the recent partner center changes will affect direct billers and CSP partners in general. As I mentioned, we might be going a little over 30 minutes today, but we'll try to keep it as tight as possible. All right, so I want to address some of the questions we normally get asked towards the end of the call, and these questions come up consistently, so I'll do it right up front here. This webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, on our Yammer group, and our website. I will share these resources at the end of the presentation and also post on our Yammer site as soon as they're available. Work 365 is available in other countries and worldwide, actually, and can be used for indirect and direct billers with one or more partner centers in any country. We support multiple currencies, countries. However, the only language supported right now in the application is English. So with that, I'm excited that we will be releasing version 2.0 of Work 365 shortly. Version 1.0 for us was about consistently being able to deliver subscription billing and management, where you could bundle your services, manage the provisioning of your recurring products, and effectively invoice them. And now this upcoming version is 2.0 of Work 365 because it not only includes all the capabilities to provision services, but also to provision customers, align your goals and business incentives, and will also take the invoicing all the way to collection of payments and moving that invoicing into the accounting system. So we have a full agenda with all the announcements that we want to share with you today. So I won't be able to cover all the application workflows. Today, as it stands, let me go into the updates here. So today, as it stands, the first item I want to talk about is invoice integration. We are already able to help our partners with integration into QuickBooks and Xero. These are solutions that are available right now. They work well. We have partners using them, and they can be acquired through us or directly from the providers of these third-party applications. In version 2.0, however, we will have a solution to integrate with Business Central. Next item I want to talk about is payments. We will have payments integration for credit card processing directly into Work 365. So you will be able to create a customer payment profile, charge any invoice in the system. So if you have an invoice in the system, you will be able to basically use Work 365 to process the payments through credit cards, regardless of whether it was generated using Work 365. In the last release, the provider was available. The provider invoice was visible and available under the billing and invoicing area of the application. We use this provider invoice primarily to calculate the bill for the usage-based elements like Azure, for Azure consumption. Going forward, we will be enhancing this to not just show the usage, but also the license reconciliation as well. The idea is you will be able to use the provider invoice entity to track your bills across all providers and use that to reconcile your purchases across the board. This is particularly useful and helpful for manual provisioning, right? So you'll be able to upload a provider invoice and then set up all the licenses and view the usage, so you can tally that up with exactly what you're billing your customers. All right, we're going to introduce the refund and credits for license reductions. I've heard this feedback now for a few consistent months, so we're going to put that feature in there. So now going forward, you'll be able to get you'll be able to see credits on the invoice for reductions and cancellations of invoices. All right. And then there will be additional enhancements to the self-service portals to surface more customer information for Azure reports and change logs. And then finally, we're going to be addressing some of the recent updates from Microsoft for security requirements and the changes in the APIs that they're making. So Yusuf will be covering some of these in more detail towards the back end of the presentation. Okay. Another important announcement that I want to share is that we will be changing our pricing model. We will be actually publishing an annual and a quarterly pricing model that will be available on our website early in the new year. It will be easy to transition into this annual model for partners that are currently on the monthly subscription model. The monthly model will most likely not be available for users, for new users at that point. And this is something we're going to clarify maybe in a month or so. And finally, from a timing standpoint, version 2.0 will be available early December. All right, now moving on here. So for the benefits of the partners that are just joining us today as first-time attendees on this call, I'll just recap that Work365 is a customer experience application for partners to run a successful CSP practice. It is built entirely on Dynamics 365 sales and customer service applications, and includes these 4 solution components: subscription management and invoicing, where you can create custom products and services, generate invoices on a consistent and timely basis every single day in an automated way. We have the self-service piece. This is built using dynamic CRM portals, where your customers can manage their own subscriptions and request changes. These changes then automatically flow back into your Work365 system, into your CRM system, and get recorded as changes and potentially provisioned as well. We have the e-commerce and payments application as well. Our e-commerce solution is where you can not just manage services, but also shop around and purchase new services. And then on the customer service side, we have email to case automation, where you can automatically assign cases and route them to the right text. So our current motion is focused primarily on the cloud and subscription management side of things. As the CSP landscape is kind of shaping up, and we see that there's quite a few moving parts. So this is kind of where we're at. Along with the subscription management piece, we're also putting effort into the self-service portals and delivering updates on these slices of the pies on a consistent basis. Then what we anticipate doing is actually moving into the third quadrant or slice of the pie here, is we'll be making a lot of investments in the e-commerce platform as partners start to develop these business plans around e-commerce, and then finally into the customer service areas in the next couple of quarters. We will go around the circle into the customer service side, like I said. And the idea is you should be able to invoice and bill anything from the system, including billable time from your Dynamics 365 system. All right. With that, quick overview of the payments capabilities that's coming up in the system. So now under the navigation, you'll see these 2 new items, which will allow you to create payment profiles and process payment transactions. What I'm looking at here is an account form, and notice there's going to be a button up on the top that says Create Payment Profile. I click something like that, an application window will open up, which will allow you to enter the credit card details or request a payment profile. This is kind of what it'll look like. Once you're able to create the profile, you can actually then go ahead and charge any invoice. On the invoice entity, you will see a button here for charge. And these two additional fields also will appear at the bottom of the invoice, which shows you what you've charged and what the balance of the amount is that needs to be charged. Now I have a screenshot here to show you what that process could look like. This opens up the application window. You can see the balance that needs to be charged and process the payment right there. Once that's done, your invoice status is updated to paid. It shows what the balance is. It's the new balance is zero. The amount that was charged was $900. And then finally, you get into the transaction history. Every single transaction is going to get logged in the system, and you'll be able to see the ledger for these payment transactions. So that covers some of the new capabilities on the payment side of things. Now, what I'd like to do is hand over the presentation to George Malloy, who's the CEO of Cloud Readiness. George is a corporate development specialist, which I believe means he has done the kind of stuff that makes companies successful, and he can help some of us with those lessons. He has held numerous executive positions with managed IT solutions and services companies. Along with that, he's had 4 successful exits and 2 successful SaaS companies. So, George, with that, the floor is yours. Hoping you can unmute yourself, and let's look at the first slide you have here.
Great, thanks very much, Ismail. Great to be with you and your community. Folks, let's just hit on the topics that we're going to review here. First, we'll take a look at the cloud opportunity and subscription marketplace. Secondarily, we'll look at the major inhibitors to subscription business growth. For many of you folks, I know that you have somewhat mature subscription and cloud businesses, but it's always good to do a little bit of a level set and kind of drop back to some of the fundamentals, and I'll share some of the information on what we see holding people back from growing this subscription business. And then finally, we'll try and put those dots, connect those dots together, and provide the quickest route to profitable revenue growth as you look to expand your overall subscription business. Next. So I know everybody on today's webinar, has fundamentally the same desired outcome and state, which is really to drive and accelerate a subscription-based revenue component of their overall business mix. And we spend a lot of time at Cloud Readiness, I'll say, upping people's business acumen as it pertains to constructing a subscription business, with the intention of, ensuring you disrupt the market and you're not disrupted by it. That you capture and optimize the opportunities that are available to all of us as the world begins to digitize on a very accelerated and rapid rate. From our perspective, we take some approaches as far as baseline education in our automated assessment platform to take a look at where people stand, so we can understand the gaps that exist and look to help them grow out their line of business as it pertains to subscription. And lastly, and ultimately, the only major outcome and objective we have is to help people grow the subscription revenue by aligning, their people, process, and underlying technology footprints, and alter their business model, sales model, and organizational model to achieve those goals. Next. So what's the cloud opportunity look like? We'll just hit on a couple of high-level aspects, and myself, coming out of the channel partner community, I tend to simplify things and put them in things I can understand, which is percentages and dollars. So as you can look at the rate of change in the shift that has occurred, moving away from transactional CapEx-based models and into the subscription world, the shift is on. In 2019, I think we'll see 22 cents on every dollar will be in new IT spend will be on subscription services. The pundits are predicting in 2020 that we'll be on 25 cents on the dollar will move towards subscription-based or consumption-based models. And we really believe, based on the folks we're talking to and some of the consulting organizations we work with, that it will actually accelerate to 35 cents on the dollar. And again, if you just kind of look at your overall business over the past several years, you've probably seen this shift. And obviously the folks on this webinar have been very involved in making that shift happen. This gives you a good sense of how you should mark to market and sort of align your growth trajectory to at least map to market at the very least. And folks like IOTAP are obviously accelerating way ahead of the market. Next. So with a look at sort of how Microsoft looks at the world, and all you folks here who are Microsoft zealots, these are some of the information that they've gleaned working with IDC, and we've seen results very much the same, if not slightly higher. But obviously, cloud partners grow quite a bit faster than, I'll say, traditional on-prem CapEx-based partners, right? At least 2x the growth of a traditional partner with 1.5 times the profit at both the gross margin line as well as EBITDA or net income. The other thing to focus on as well is that as you look at creating your own CSP entity and growing that, the reoccurring revenue monthly, quarterly elements tend to be 1.8 to 2x the size of a traditional partner who really doesn't use subscription as a true growth engine. Next. But one of the things, you need to kind of take a step back, and many of the folks on this webinar have probably experienced it, or you may be somewhere in this evolution. A lot of the partners we work with are entering the cloud, looking to create a footprint and looking at cloud as a viable element of their overall business. So they're committed, they're researching, perhaps looking for the right model or the right approach and how do I get started. All of you at some level, especially if you're converting your current clients to cloud-centric subscription clients, will always deal with the revenue chasm. In other words, as the revenue shifts, if you were used to transactional-based CapEx models, you have to deal with, what's my financial model look like? How do I deal with shifts in revenue, gross margin, and cash flow? And how do I prepare for that as far as constructing my overall model? But when you do come to the other side of the chasm, you're in a much better place, number one. Number two, you start to really see the value and the acceleration of compounding your revenue. If you refer back to the rule of 78 and how that can really help you grow revenue, you get to the other side of that chasm with a pretty healthy business that's much more valuable, than the business you entered with. Next. And we're going to take a look at the cloud inhibitors. And again, some of you folks, because of the maturity in the cloud, will have, obviously, you're at a different place in the journey. But I think fundamentally, these are all good aspects to pay attention to. So the first inhibitor we always see is strategy. And many times we see no distinct express strategy in place, nor a real plan to accelerate cloud and subscription. In fact, our assessment platform will show that 83% of all partners that we interrogate via the platform do not have a strategy or definitive plan in place to grow subscription over time. Next. The next major inhibitor as part of an overall strategy and plan is the actual financial planning and modeling. As we just discussed, depending on what your strategy looks like and how you're going to construct your growth, financial planning is a fundamental element that you need to take a close look at. And many times the financial shifts are not understood, nor have people modeled them properly. And in our case, we have several modeling tools that we use to help partners understand what it looks like as they start to move from more CapEx-oriented transactional to subscription-based models. But typically, 93% of all partners that we work with have not really done sound financial modeling to understand those shifts. Next. The largest element that affects the majority of clients we deal with is not really taking a solid look at their actual sales model, and more importantly, their subscription-based compensation model. 96% of all partners basically have an inadequate, and I'm not saying that's the folks on today's webinar, but in general, the ones we work with, and we work with quite a bit quite a few Microsoft partners, have not constructed a compensation model and plan that will allow them to accelerate and drive subscription as a strategic initiative and as a growth engine. So that's always a major problem. And even more importantly, don't have the underlying capabilities to deal with that change because they haven't adjusted their sales model. Next. Marketing is always a major issue. Most of the folks, as Ismail said, I came out of the channel partner community, spent over 25 years running partners, and marketing was never our strong suit. And as you make that shift, if you have a highly transactional business and you're looking to accelerate and shift more to subscription, marketing is usually a major inhibitor, typically because marketing many times is not a strategic element that gets driven in a great cadence month in, month out. And usually the velocity and the speed of your marketing and the components, i.e. hybrid, inbound, outbound, are not taken into account. And we look to uncover those and help folks create a marketing framework that really accelerates the pipeline growth they need to create a good subscription business. Next. And go-to-market fundamentally is always a problem area for a lot of our clients, especially those who were very project-based and project-oriented, and being able to package and price their overall offerings. And a lot of the work that Work 365 has done in creating the underlying systems to be able to allow you to create your own solution stacks and sort of package up your own approaches and pricing schemas is very valuable. And many times, we don't see the necessary work being done to make sure that you all arrive at your blended gross margin targets that you use to drive your overall business model. Next. And then lastly, there's the underlying systems, and obviously Work 365 is aimed directly at this problem. 84% of the partners that we deal with truly do not have automated platforms in place to deal with finance, sales compensation, and the automatic tracking and orchestration, if you will, of driving a subscription business, which is one of the things that drew us to Work 365 and the valuable work they're doing. It's imperative that you have that underlying systematic automated approach to driving a subscription business. And obviously the folks at Work 365 bring that to the table. Next. And then lastly, for those of you who haven't really altered your business model a great deal and are sort of in your own motion to do that, I just wanted to introduce to you the what's called the business canvas. This is a great way to literally look at how you start to look at your overall business model, all the way from the customer segments you'll deal with. In this case, suffice it to say that the focus of this was with a partner that had a healthcare strategy. That was their primary vertical, and basically allows you to put together all the pieces from revenue through cost, your key partnerships, and your key activities in a very easy and pliable way, if you will, to start to construct that business model so that you really have a full picture and you have the visibility to construct a model that will allow you to accelerate the growth into subscription. And, this is an area we spend a lot of time helping partners understand how to construct an effective business model, and this is the tool we use. Next. So let's bring it all together and kind of put all these pieces together sort of into one cohesive picture. So first and foremost, and I believe everybody on this webinar who's associated with Work 365 is committed to a subscription business model. But I can tell you it's imperative that for those of you who may not be and might be looking at cloud more opportunistically, that you take a serious look at making that commitment and creating a strategy and plan that will allow you to reach your objectives. Because again, as I said earlier, time and time again, we don't see the regimen and really the commitment to tack up numbers and make definitive declarations that say, hey, listen, 25% of our overall revenue is going to come from subscription, and here's how we're going to do it. Next, a lot of times we don't see ownership for that subscription business. In other words, who's going to own it? Who wakes up every day to drive it? Who's going to look to grow this business, maybe from the single digits from a growth perspective into the mid to high 20s as far as accelerating that growth and really stretching out and accelerating on that business. We mentioned the reward system. Many times we just do not see the right compensation and or reward systems, whether that be for your consulting folks, your sales professionals, or your underlying delivery folks, to really incent them to grow that subscription component of your business. And then lastly is, making sure, and I'm sure everybody on this call is making all the right moves, but really looking to, platform like Work 365, where you have the underlying mechanics of a system that literally helps you orchestrate and extend your subscription capabilities, because the underlying platform and system you have to track finance, to do everything from a self-service perspective, to drive sales compensation in an automated fashion is all within that platform, and it's a vital element of being successful in the subscription economy. Next. Now we're going to totally shift gears, and hopefully the last couple minutes has been valuable, but let's just take a look at value and valuation as it pertains to growing out a subscription business. So on the left-hand side, let me just give you some examples of how I'll say common channel partners are valued. So a value-added reseller, from a product-only perspective, if I was to walk in, and one of the things we do is assess values and valuations on companies. If you have a product-centric business, i.e. a traditional hardware software company, we'll pay about 10 cents on the dollar of revenue for that piece of your business. To the right-hand side is about 45 cents, and I'll say traditional break fix or hourly activities. So assume 45 cents on the dollar of revenue for that type of activity. So for a little bit more of a consulting IT solution provider perspective, and in that area, you'll get about 67 cents on the dollar. So just think you're doing fixed bid, highly mature professional service business, but no real reoccurring revenue element. And then lastly, if you look at somebody with a very solid MSP business, probably mostly with annual contracts, not so much monthly or quarterly, they're valued about $1.27 or so on every dollar of revenue. But then when you move into the CSP space with a highly subscription-based revenue model, and especially if you can get your overall subscription up to about 50% or more of your overall business mix, now you're talking roughly $1.75 to $2 in valuation for every dollar of revenue you have, and much more than that if you happen to have your own intellectual property. Much like IOTAP has done with their offering, Work 365. Having that intellectual property and approach will set the valuation way above the $2 mark. When you bring intellectual property into the equation. So those are some things to think about, not only as you build out and sort of enhance your P&L statement, by moving to subscription, but from an exit valuation or the overall value of your company, having a large subscription component is infinitely valuable. So with that, I appreciate the time, and just want to go through one call to action. So as I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of assessments. We do it through an automated platform we have called the Cloud Readiness Business Tracker. In working with Ismail and his team, we'll put together a special offering for the folks on today's webinar. So for $325, you'll be able to do a complete assessment via our SaaS platform that'll only take you about an hour to perform. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to us at cloudreadiness.com/contact, and please mention IOTAP in the subject line, and we'll make sure we get you that special pricing if you're interested. And with that, appreciate your time, and I'll hand it back to Ismail.
Thank you very much for that, George. Really appreciate it. I am now going to actually hand over to Yusuf. Yusuf, you should be able to unmute yourself, and I will drive the presentation forward. So it's all you now. Yep.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yusuf Khatri. I am the CTO at IoTap. At this part of the webinar, we'll cover some recent announcements from Microsoft that have an impact on all CSP partners. And we'll cover these announcements and what they mean for us. Next slide, Swam. The first announcement that we will discuss today is regarding Partner Center security. This is in fact a three-part announcement. The first part is about the way partners connect to Partner Center via APIs. Currently, this connection is made by REST APIs using an app plus user and app only model. What this involves is registering an application and Partner Center tenant and then using a combination of the application ID and appropriate credentials to connect to Partner Center. This approach works, but requires partners to share their credentials with control panel vendors such as Work365. It also means that the integration account cannot have multi-factor authentication. To overcome these challenges, Microsoft has now introduced the new model of connection, which is based on the Azure AD consent framework. What this means for partners is that they do not have to share credentials with CPVs. Partners using Work365 are already familiar with the consent experience. Smile if you click, if you just click, please. Work365 requires Azure AD consent and installation. Under this new model, partners will need to provide consent for Partner Center, as shown in the screenshot that came up right now. Those that connect to multiple regional partner centers will be required to provide consent for each partner center. Microsoft has also introduced the concept of a control panel vendor, or CPV, as I just mentioned, which is an ISV such as Work365 that provides billing and automation services for CSP partners. In an effort to improve security, CSPs will be required to register themselves with Microsoft. A CSP partner program, a CSP pilot program is in motion, and we're pleased to announce that Work365 is nominated to be part of the initial CPV pilot, due to start early December. Next slide, please. The next part of the security announcement affects partners that connect to Partner Center via the web portal. I'm assuming that this is most, if not all, partners in the Microsoft ecosystem. Partners will now require multi-factor authentication, or MFA, when logging into Partner Center portal. The specific enforcement dates are on the slide there. This is an important step in improving the Partner Center security, but also has some immediate ramifications. If you're a partner that also uses APIs to connect to Partner Center, you will need to implement the consent method described earlier, or your connection to Partner Center APIs will fail. MFA is available via Azure AD Premium Plan 1, which most partners should get as part of their IURs, their internal use rights. However, these IUR licenses are usually supplied as a block, and if you connect to multiple partner centers, then you may need to purchase additional licenses for AADP. Note that if you even have a single PC tenant, you may still be connected to Sandbox environment, which is technically a different Partner Center tenant. Next slide, please. CSP partners have a requirement to execute the Microsoft Cloud Agreement, or MCA, with their customers. This is not a new CSP requirement, but has been in existence since the inception of the CSP program. Microsoft, however, has now decided to track the agreement execution. This new tracking requirement came into effect 7th of November 2018. Partners will not be able to add new customers or modify subscriptions for existing customers if the agreement execution details are not on file in Partner Center. Most partners have heard this announcement before, but not everyone knows that they have until 22nd March if they use Partner Center APIs. If you are using Work365, you will notice that while you're able to make a change to subscription quantities in Work365 and have that reflect in Partner Center, you will not be able to make a change directly within Partner Center if the agreements are not on file. So that's a benefit if you're already using Work365. Next slide, please. Lastly, Microsoft has tweaked the process for CSP authorization. The invitation link of CSP authorization now points to a Microsoft store for business and has an option to remove delegated administration. Until now, partners got delegated admin privileges when they got authorized as CSP for a tenant. This was automatic. With this change, partners are now able to select whether they want to get the API access on a customer tenant or not. Ismail, just if you click on the screen. So this screenshot now that will show up shows the partners that experience of requesting for a reseller relationship. This has been very similar to what was there before, but note that the addition of a checkbox for delegated admin privileges, and also the link now points to businessstore.microsoft.com. The next screenshot presents the customer's point of view when authorizing the partner. Ismail, if you go to the next slide, please. In this case, the DAP option was selected and the customer receives confirmation that the delegated admin access will be provided to the partner, and they have to acknowledge that. On the next screenshot shows the customer's point of view when the reseller has not opted for delegated admin privilege access. So this is, I guess, from a customer's perspective, this experience is a little bit different now than it used to be before. Ultimately, Microsoft wants customers to manage their partner relationships and allow fine-grained access over their tenant to partners. So customers will be able to choose that. This is the direction Microsoft seems to be going in, and we feel that this is the first of many such changes to come. And with that, I think we're done with from the announcement section. Ismail, over to you again.
All right. Thank you very much, Yusuf, as well. So I'll just, we're at the end of all our presentation here. So I want to just close with some of these final remarks. This current release, as I mentioned earlier, is targeted for early December. We will post the availability and the instructions of this on the Yammer site. And on the help and about section page of your application, you will see a link to download the new release when it is available. The link to the webinars are also going to be available on these sites. I'm going to be at Extreme 365 in Austin in early December. We don't have a booth there this year, but if you're out there and if you're able to make some time, I'd love to meet you in person. And I want to thank George for that wonderful presentation. And with that, I'll open it up for questions. So it looks like we already have a few questions. I'm going to see what I can answer. So somebody asked if this is available. I guess this was around the integration, if this is available for Dynamics Finance and Operations. So the solution is built on Dynamics 365, which is Sales and Service, which is Dynamics CRM. That's where the invoices are generated. That's where all the customer activity happens. But the invoice that gets generated will then be integrated into other ERP systems and finance and accounting packages like QuickBooks or Xero or Finance and Operations and Business Central. All right, let me see if I have, there's a few other questions which I think I've already answered, and I'll just hang on here for a minute or so. If anybody has any more questions, please don't hesitate to ask them now before we conclude the presentation here in literally 1 minute. I'll stay on the line here. All right, looks like we don't have any more questions. I'm going to close this out. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. And our next webinar will be actually in January. So for all of you getting ready for the holidays, it's happy holidays a little bit in advance, and see you soon. Thanks.